The European Coalition on Oil in Sudan recently released a report, and it basically makes two suggestions in terms of two options the North and South Sudan has in terms of structuring its oil relationship in future. The first one is to have a continued revenue sharing regime like it is currently. But that will be a very hard sell, clearly, in Southern Sudan. How do you sell sharing your revenue with Northern Sudan if the oil is all located, or most of that oil is located in Southern Sudan? So the second option is to negotiate a deal that looks at payment for the use of the infrastructure in the north, transportation fees, management fees, security, those kind of things that would be needed, to secure the export of the oil through Port Sudan. Now, I would say the negotiation on the relationship, the oil relationship, will necessitate a highly, highly technical deal, ultimately, between the two parties. I think there's also new opportunities that can open up. I'm not going to go into all the details there, but this is just one example that I've picked up. Last year in May, the Aecon refinery, which is a joint venture between the Khartoum-based Ayat Oilfield Company and the government of Southern Sudan state-owned Nile Petroleum Company, announced a tender for bids to construct a 50,000 barrel per day refinery with an estimated cost of $1.8 billion in Southern Sudan. There are plans to build up to 3 new refineries in Southern Sudan. Now, I think at a business level, this could also be an indication of what one can expect in terms of a future business relationship between the North and the South. Even though the world may be addicted to oil, it may very well be that the oily relationship between Juba and Khartoum can form the basis of a new chapter of future cooperation between the two parties. The Nile Basin Initiative, which was formed in 1999, which envisions a new regional regime for the use of the water of the Nile. Now, in the last 2 years, the big controversy came about what they call the Cooperative Framework Agreement on the Nile Basin Initiative. And the goal with this agreement will be to transform the Nile Basin Initiative into a permanent Nile River Commission. But in order for the Nile River Commission to come into effect, the treaty needs 7 signatories out of the 9. I think it was mentioned earlier, Egypt, Sudan hasn't signed, Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo also haven't signed this agreement. Now, the question is, if Southern Sudan becomes independent, will it join the Nile Basin Initiative? Quite likely. And that could potentially shift the power balance in the Nile Basin area. Now, the big aim of the Nile Basin Initiative and ultimately this cooperative framework will be an equitable sharing of the use and a more, one would say, I don't know if democratic is the right word, but a more thought-through process of how do you share all the use of the water between all the countries that share the Nile. South Sudan, as an independent state, will also want to access the Nile waters for agricultural, industrial, and hydroelectricity generation. So the geopolitics of the Nile River will in all likelihood become more intense due to water being naturally a very scarce commodity in Northeast Africa, growing populations and the need for economic development, and lastly also more stress on the existing water resources. Can Sudan's resources be shared? My answer is yes, but it will take a new type of thinking, like on oil, like in terms of the political relationship that will have to be negotiated between Khartoum and Juba. But this, yes, is provided that there is a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect and the realization that Sudan's post-referendum transformation creates an opportunity for renewal and innovation.